the way to go to start. So let me share my screen and we'll get going. All right, Catherine, are we good to go on the recording? All right, well, welcome everyone. Today is the first of 12 installments in our new summer series, the UWGB summer series. This year we're calling it Technology in Context. And a few words about myself. My name is Oliver Buechse. I have transformed my career focus from traditional strategy into digital transformation because I believe this is where the music is playing currently and especially going forward. I've been working since last year with Matt at the Cofrin School of Business as executive in residence. And these education opportunities are part of bringing the faculty and students of UWGB up to speed on digital transformation topics, but also reaching the community, which we hope to do through this series. There are two big parts to our series this summer. The first 5 sessions here will focus on the fundamentals. Today, I'm going to give you a high-level overview, how all of these technologies come together to create impact in our lives. And then June 17th through July 8th, we're going to talk about specific technologies so you can gain a deeper understanding. The title of our series, The Technology in Context, then comes to life as we look at the second set of 5 sessions. There's a lot of hot topics that are being discussed in our society: racial bias, democracy, the future of our planet, the future of learning, the future of relationships, and so forth. And I want to shine a light on these topics from the angle of new technologies. How do these new technologies impact the discussion of these topics? So this is new for me and hopefully very interesting to everyone involved. So today's topic is, I called it the greatest change event in human history. And I'm talking about digital transformation, or the great transformation, as some people call it. And those of you who have heard me talk in the past, you know my general spiel. So I'm just going to recap my general spiel, and then I'll tell you what has changed. So my general spiel has been, there's a wave of change coming, and I've always used this visual metaphor. All of these technologies building up, and there's new technologies sort of going over the top of the layer, new energy that keeps feeding that wave, and it's coming at us at a significantly larger speed than any change in history. And my concern has always been that if we don't learn to ride that wave, that we would fall behind in Wisconsin. There's a significant impact on a wide range of jobs. These are some numbers from an Oxford University study. And this impact is somewhat theoretical. It's a model that is extrapolated. And there are some emerging models that say, yes, many jobs will be impacted, but maybe not as many jobs will disappear, because human ingenuity has a way of creating new categories of jobs. But any job creation really relies on sort of a feeding mechanism. You need to have a source of value creation in your geography. And if we are at risk of losing some of our headquarters businesses, if some of our industries are taking big hits, then that would not bode well for us. So my doom and gloom message was always, we are at risk of becoming a digital rust belt. So from that core pitch, I'm bifurcating a little bit today. The first part, I will reiterate that yes, in fact, our lives will be very thoroughly impacted by technology, and I'm going to walk you through several arenas of impact. But on that second part, I have a new perspective. And if time permits, at the very end, I'm going to share with you my new perspective on the prospects for Wisconsin. There is still a call to action, but we may actually have an opportunity to usher in a golden era for Wisconsin. And it's not directly related to technology, but we'll get there hopefully by the end of this meeting. So let's look at the first arena of change, maybe the broadest one of them all, how we live and work. The principal idea I want you all to understand is that through the connection of technologies, through the collection of data about almost anything and everything in our lives, a parallel digital world is being created. It's almost like in the movie Tron, where you can transition from the real world into that digital world. And in that parallel digital world, you have buildings, you have transportation infrastructure, you have stores, you have individuals, all being represented by data. And not only the data in the moment, but also the data that has been collected over time. And with very powerful tools to analyze that data, it becomes possible to make predictions about the weather, predictions about traffic patterns, predictions about energy consumption in buildings, predictions about waste that's being generated, and predictions about what we will do, where we will be, what we will likely purchase or want to consume. And all of that obviously then leads to opportunities for marketing, opportunities for influencing. So that would be another category I will highlight to you. One of the spaces that we really sort of claim as our castle, our domain, is our home. And here technologies are entering as well. If you look at the elder space, the elder living in particular, many older people have to abandon living in their home. They go into facilities where they have better care, but there are now technologies that allow a house, a living space, an apartment, a condo, to be monitored in ways that was never before possible. Monitors that people wear that signal their health status, cameras, indicators of activity in rooms, and so forth. We've also become used to new security devices. Almost everyone is now recording what's happening on their front door through Ring and Nest and other devices. Everybody can see which Amazon packages have been stolen and who took them. And the next generation of those devices are a little bit more intrusive. Ring has now a little drone that flies around inside your house and sort of captures information. So it's meant for you to see what's going on inside your house, maybe when you're not there, but it could also be used to supervise children or to supervise and support information gathering about people needing help. Where all of this is leading is the intelligent house, a building, a living area that basically knows the people that live in it, knows their habits, and increasingly takes away the mundane tasks of turning on and off the lights, selecting your favorite channel on Saturday night because it kind of has learned what you like to watch, playing your favorite music, adjusting the climate settings in the home depending on whether or not you're home, et cetera, right? So this digital world is creeping into our little castle, and there's going to be a lot of data that will be collected there. In fact, the way we build our houses could also change. Mostly it will still be wood frame construction in the United States, but a new technology called 3D printing has emerged, and there is a 3D printer that uses cement that allows someone to basically print a house layer by layer in less than a day. And there are still some elements that need to then be installed, like the metal elements or the windows. But there's going to be solutions to create very cost-efficient living, so that the entry point for owning a home is going to be dramatically lower than it is today. I spoke earlier about the ability of older people to live comfortably, and that's not just a function of physical comfort, it is also a function of engagement and sort of emotional rapport, loneliness is going to be a big deal. We've already become used to communicating mainly through our devices, maybe not so much in person anymore. The pandemic obviously was really hard on older people, those in facilities who could not safely see their families. And there's going to be a generation of devices that engage older people, but you could also see how these devices could be used to engage families, young children, and so forth. These devices have natural language capabilities, so you can hold a conversation with them. They have very powerful memory functions. They can download your whole Facebook history. They can know all your friends. They can monitor in parallel what 1,000 people that you might know are doing, who is online, who is maybe in your vicinity, who would you like to connect with. And then they also learn your preferences and behaviors and really become that companion that is always by your side, emotionally maybe as valuable as a pet, but from a cognitive perspective, much more powerful. These robots or a different set of robots may also be used to physically support people who require care. So this idea that we're not going to have enough human caretakers anymore for an increasingly older population will be partially solved by having robots that carry us around, whether that's in a hospital, in a care facility, or eventually even in our own home. Robots may also serve food, and while they serve food, they can engage with us, collecting more data or using data they already have about us to engage us in conversation, maybe cross-sell a dessert or whatever it is. Entertainment will change dramatically. This is a real view of what somebody might have seen at Dallas Stadium, AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Now, of course, there's not two giant robots that are running across the field and interfering with the play, but if you were wearing your augmented reality device that they were handing out, you were basically offered a superimposed graphical enhancement to the real game. When we watch TV, we already are used to that, sort of those fighting robots at Monday Night Football. And so augmented reality, overlaying graphical information onto our view of reality, is going to be a big deal, and it's going to be driven by the arrival of 5G, because that gives us the bandwidth and the data capacity to consume that technology, not just in a enclosed Wi-Fi environment, but basically anywhere and all the time. And there's an abundance of applications, which we will cover in one of the next sessions. One of those is medical uses. Doctors will be able to see computer-based graphical information superimposed onto the patient's body to help plan surgery or run better diagnostics. So again, this is a technology that is extremely pervasive, and it's going to touch many aspects of our lives. Augmented reality is what I just described, superimposing computer-generated information onto a view of the real world. A different technology is virtual reality. Virtual reality is more immersive. You basically put on these goggles and you immerse yourself completely into a computer-generated environment. There's also some immersion into real-world images, like floating down a river or seeing, aerial shots of something, but mostly virtual reality is the gateway into a computer-generated world. In this case, GoPuff has created a shopping experience where you are almost like in, Wonderland or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, an amazing sort of creative land in which you can pick your snacks, interact with your snacks, and be carried away. And then this company actually delivers it to your door very quickly, so you don't have to leave the comfort of your home anymore. Mainly they're focused on dormitories right now. Now, most of the categories I've covered so far were impacts on our lives, on our daily lives, and work is a significant portion of our daily lives. I always bring up this website, willrobotstakemyjob.com. the most comprehensive research and inventory of impact on various activities, aggregated into impact on various jobs. So if you are a teacher, if you are a job seeker, if you are an employer, you should really sort of enter the jobs that you or others are pursuing to find out what's the magnitude of the impact. What is some additional intelligence? What can you learn about that? Now, it will not tell you, this site will not tell you why different jobs are impacted more or less. But once you begin to understand the range of technologies that we will cover in our series, you can put 2 and 2 together and you'll understand there's an impact of AI, there's an impact of expert systems, there's an impact of robotic process automation, of blockchain, et cetera, et cetera. In the physical world, we're going to see a new paradigm of humans and machines working together. The old paradigm of automation through robots was basically, caged stationary robots doing the work, highly automated, quickly, precision work. In the future, the best skills of humans and machines will be combined to complete complex tasks, and the robot will do parts of that task that they are very good at, but the human will be working in conjunction. And these robots, they react to touch, they don't hurt the human, they pull back immediately. And future generations of these cobots, as they are called, will react to voice commands. They will be mobile. So it's almost like you have your little robot apprentice that is following you, and you can tell them what to do, what tools to bring you, or what tasks to complete. So that's another vision we may have, that we all have a robot companion that follows us around and does little errands and tasks for us. A different category is not replacing the human, but enhancing the human ability. Exoskeletons are one way of doing that in the physical realm. These exoskeletons are in service already. They are being used at airports for package handlers. They're being used in construction to prevent injury, to allow people to lift either larger weights or to lift with more continuity and not tire as quickly as they would today. So there's a whole category of enhancing the human, and it could be an exoskeleton. There are other categories, other types of enhancements that try to implant devices into the human. There's going to be enhanced hearing, enhanced vision through either augmented reality or other devices. There's also implanted microchips. There may be, titanium-based bone replacement. So we're going to be all like the billion-dollar man and can run faster and live longer. So enhancing the human body and the human mind will be another category. In the cognitive space, one of the most powerful changes will be expert systems. Expert systems are not true artificial intelligence. They are basically a collection of decision-making patterns that humans have displayed. So think about a job in which you have 1,000 customer service reps, or you have 1,000 engineers that repair machines, right? Some of them are doing their job better than others. Some of them are answering the questions with more precision. They make fewer mistakes. How are they doing it? So knowledge engineers are basically observing how humans do their job and make their decisions, and then they are emulating those decision patterns in a system that becomes accessible. So you can then ask that system questions. It will give you the answer. It can observe what you're doing and make suggestions on how you could do your job better. So again, this could be invisible, running in the background, or it could be sort of a first layer of interaction that will replace hotlines, second level of support, shifting that cognitive support to a machine-based intelligence. An entirely different category is how we move around. And that is how we move around, but it also includes how we move things around. So everybody has talked about autonomous transportation, right? So Tesla obviously is known for already having an autopilot function, and sometimes we read about horrific accidents where somehow the autopilot makes a mistake or the driver was actually asleep at the switch. This little overview shows you the different levels of autonomous driving. And where we are today is this level 3. Cars principally have the ability to drive autonomously. They have cameras, sensors, LiDAR detection, and so they can observe their environment. They have precision GPS, so they know where they are, at least theoretically. And then they can steer through the obstacles or through the traffic based on the sensor input that they collect. But the driver is still meant to be in the driver's seat and can take over control at any point in time. Future evolutions will take us to the point of being inside the vehicle and really not having to do anything anymore. Maybe we give the verbal command, take me home, take me to the doctor's office, take me to the university, and then the vehicle will just do that. That could be an individual personal vehicle. It could be a collective vehicle, a mini shuttle, maybe even a bus that follows a routine route. And then at some point, the function of the driver will be completely eliminated. Here are some examples of collective vehicles. One is called Ollie, so I like that in particular because it reminds me of myself. And the other one is an autonomous shuttle by Toyota. So again, as we are not required to drive the vehicle, then the question is, are we required to be in a vehicle by ourselves? The majority of commutes in the United States today are done by a single driver. If we have vehicles accessible and maybe these shuttles become as ubiquitous as New York taxis are in New York today, we could hop on, hop off, go anywhere we want to, follow routes. So the mode of transportation could change completely. I mentioned earlier, it's also moving around things. We have a certain idea of how retail works, right? It is a physical store. You know what to expect when you go in. You know what you can buy there. But what if you didn't have to go to the store? What if the store came to you? What if this shuttle delivered a freshly stacked snack machine at the university cafeteria every day, or even outside, or somewhere where it's accessible, maybe close to the dorms. So students just have to step out the dorms and boom, they can buy their favorite drinks and snacks and lunch items. And then for dinner, a different machine is being placed there. So autonomous transportation and the ability to sort of access and anticipate what people want to buy at different points in time can be combined to an entirely new paradigm of retail. Flying cars, that's always the dream. I actually had connected some folks at the university with someone in Wisconsin who has developed a flying car, but the pandemic sort of put us on ice for a while. Hopefully we can revitalize that. These are no longer utopian Jetson-like concepts. There are flying cars that have been licensed. We're going to see air taxis coming to us soon. And so this, again, brings an entirely new paradigm. We have roadways with very clear rules and signs and everything on the ground. But the multidimensionality of traveling through the air is going to pose massive challenges, but also massive opportunities. You can circumvent traffic jams. Will you be allowed to fly over your neighbor's property in the morning when you take off, or do you have to follow the road patterns? There are so many questions, but a new era of personalized aerial travel is coming to us very soon. Other concepts are, let's rethink how we can travel from place to place long distance very quickly. Today, we fly through the air. So the irony is that the individual travel may go from the ground to the air, and maybe long distance travel may go from the air to the ground because these Hyperloop tubes allow essentially to shoot this vehicle through the tube in a vacuum at a very, very high speed, very safe. There's no risk of falling down. There's no risk of colliding with anything. And so this is a technology that is, again, in the exploration stage, but first routes for these Hyperloop systems are already being planned. And since you could dig them underground, if you wanted to, they would also not compete with existing traffic infrastructure. That last aspect is also true for another concept, another Elon Musk idea. He has one company called the Boring Company, and it's not boring, it is actually boring holes into the ground, creating new tunnels through which traffic would basically be operating independent of existing infrastructure. If you look at traffic jam in Chicago or San Francisco, Los Angeles, there could be merit to having these tunnels supplement existing infrastructure. For us in Green Bay, that's probably not going to be a relevant topic for a very long time. Transportation is going to change. Long-haul transportation from platooning, in which multiple trucks basically speak to each other to coordinate their movement, their speed, their braking patterns, to the coordination of transportation through AI, where basically AI can very clearly understand what goods need to flow from point A to point B, and then optimize the flow of those goods through the air, through ships, through individual transportation. We're seeing right now supply chain disruption as a result of the pandemic. Nothing that AI can do about that if the parts are not there, but the integration of our supply chains in the future is going to be much stronger. We may see electric trucks. I actually saw an article today about the first battery-powered container ship. It's a fully autonomous container ship that was created in Norway. It is powered by carbon neutral energy through water powered electricity. So there's going to be a lot of innovation. Driverless trucks that zoom next to us on the freeways, and we hope they're not going to make an unexpected turn because you can't really signal anyone that you're in their dead angle. So lots of changes here in the long-haul transportation arena as well. Then we go to the other end, the last mile. We may see these little robots zipping around our neighborhood. Already, the Amazon truck with their annoying reverse sound has replaced the UPS truck or the FedEx truck that used to come much more often into our neighborhood, and now it's a daily sight of the Amazon truck. In certain suburban neighborhoods or maybe even urban neighborhoods, they may supplement that with these robots that then deliver the packages to the houses, place them there, or run quick errands from a distribution center to certain recipients. And within warehouses, this is one example that I've explained many times. The movement of goods within warehouses is also being revolutionized. Amazon has figured out a way of automating the movement of goods in their warehouses by essentially having robots move the shelves around. And the role of humans has been changed into stocking these shelves and picking items from the shelves rather than moving around the warehouse itself. I mentioned earlier that with the collection of data, the door is being opened to collecting data about us, to understanding our patterns, and then ultimately also to influencing our thinking and decision making. So where we have this Tron-like parallel universe of the real world, there is going to be what we call a digital twin of us that is being generated somewhere. Today, many companies have pieces of that. Somebody has our financial information, somebody has our health information, somebody has our shopping information, but we are so eager to share information about ourselves without even realizing that. If you carry a smartphone, you are sharing with your provider where you are physically, and all of that is being tracked. You're sharing what you're thinking about because you usually, search it. Today, when my kids ask a question that I can't answer off the top of my head, we Google it, right? So Google knows what we as a family are talking about, what we are thinking about. People post on social media what they're thinking about, what's on their mind, what we are interested in. What searches do we run? What advertisement do we look at? What do we click on? And in the not too distant future, there's going to be facial recognition and emotion recognition from either the facial expression, or our speech. So if you are in reach of a camera, you can assume that what you're thinking, what you're feeling, may be captured and may be decoded. And then ultimately, we communicate our social habits. Who are we connecting with? Who are our friends? What of their actions do we like? Do we share? So it's no longer just us as an isolated individual, but it is us in the ecosystem of our social connections. And that information is extremely powerful if you want to get to know someone, if you want to market to them or influence them. And it's not a shocker that, during the 2016 election, Cambridge Analytica went to Facebook, right? Because Facebook is one of those aggregators. And if you want to know, if you can't influence 100 million people, but you can influence 5 million people, which 5 million people would you want to try to influence? You need to know exactly who is open to being influenced, who's sort of sitting on the fence. Voice is going to be the way of interacting with technology. That's not necessarily the case. In the early days of technology, you had to be able to type code to communicate with the machine. Then we had more user-friendly interfaces, Windows, moving things around on the screen, graphical interfaces. And now with the abilities of natural language, voice is going to become the predominant interaction. We already talk to Siri and to Alexa, and we're becoming very used to that. We're getting better feedback, better responses to that. And in the future, we may direct our car. We may direct the appliances in our home by voice. We will obviously continue to ask questions and engage in dialogue. And as the devices become better, as they become more intelligent, that dialogue goes from, what's the weather in Green Bay today, to what do you suggest I do this weekend? What's out there? My preferences, you know me. Go do the search the world for me, everything that's available online, and then make recommendations to me. And just like with getting better and better answers on facts, we will get better and better recommendations, and it'll become second nature to rely on the recommendations that we receive from those machines. I mentioned earlier facial recognition technology. It analyzes the muscle activity in your face. There's research from Paul Ekman that's on the basis of that, because every emotion corresponds to a certain configuration of our facial muscles. There is the dilation of our pupils. There's the tilt of our head. There's, all these body language indicators can now be decoded by machines. We're also going to target it with information differently. Today, if we all walk by a billboard, we pretty much all see the same thing. Already, paper billboards have been replaced by digital billboards, and those digital billboards can display different messages, maybe at different times of the day. But the future of messaging is actually one where we could be walking as a group of people, or different people are strolling down the mall or driving on a highway. And depending on the distance, the angle to the billboard, if the billboard has a camera and it can recognize what type of vehicle is approaching or what type of individual is walking towards me, it can actually discern information about that vehicle, about that individual, maybe even know who it is if it has facial recognition software, then display a very targeted message. One technology that allows that is called parallel reality. It was introduced in 2020. And today, any screen that is made up of pixels can only display one image, because every pixel can only display one color at a time. These new pixels that they have developed can emit different types of light into different directions. And if you synchronize that, you can essentially tell a person on the left, you can show them a different image than the person on the right. And so this was a single screen that was shown in Las Vegas, but depending on the angle that you stood, you could see 12 different images actually being represented on that screen. So highly targeted messaging through commonly shared interfaces is going to be another way of messaging with high precision. And finally, we enjoy human communication. We are getting comfortable with Siri and Alexa because they sound more human, but they obviously don't look human. They don't look anything at all. They don't have a body. Samsung introduced this new concept of artificial humans. These are computer-generated individuals. They have a name, they have a character, they have a look. We may trust them based on that look, based on the way they speak. They could be a professor of marketing. They could be a student mentor. They could be a child asking questions, right? And as the conversational capabilities become better and as the graphical capabilities become better, these artificial humans will enter our lives. We may see the weather person, the news person, a talk show host, a guest in a talk show actually no longer be a real human, but instead be an artificial human. The companions that we have in our homes, our virtual companions, may at some point take on this shape, displayed maybe through a full-size mirror or display in our homes, or maybe at some day even through augmented reality, could be overlaid to the real world and kind of follow us around, as has been the case in certain science fiction movies, right? We will have a virtual companion that is essentially has all the qualities of a real human being. The final category is how we learn and acquire new skills. I did do a more detailed readout of this to the leadership and the faculty of the university, and I'm going to share a few highlights with you here. So the first thing is that our children are becoming more used to learning on their own, learning outside of institutional settings. During the pandemic, this was absolutely critical, especially in the early days. Khan Academy kids completely saved me from going insane, not knowing what to do with my 5-year-old at the time. These learning modalities, they put a lot of resources into making them engaging. Again, they capture all of the information that is coming back, what makes kids most successful in learning, and then they optimize that for different learning styles. The learning environments are also changing, and it's not all going in the direction of technology. Some learning environments are going back to nature, but bringing some technology out there so you could take pictures of plants and know what they are. You know, the iPad is always with you and provides access to the universe of knowledge, but you're actually learning in and from nature. What a classroom, a physical classroom looks like could change dramatically. We've had this discussion, classroom of the future, here at the university as well. Again, the modality of learning will change. We may not just be looking at a chalkboard or a screen. Virtual reality may create very engaging learning experience where the individual student can basically decide how they navigate through that environment. Teachers could practice with avatar students, or students who cannot physically participate in a classroom could be represented through an avatar and as such still interact with classmates. That was sort of one of the big downfalls of Zoom meetings. They were sort of so one-dimensional in their ability to display interactions. We may have devices in the classroom that represent a teacher or an assistant teacher or an expert, a mentor to a child, or even, as I mentioned earlier, children who cannot attend physically could be represented through these machines. Today, they're often used in telemedicine, and hospital environments to bring in doctors that cannot physically be there, but they could be used with the same objective in a learning environment. And then again, we're back to these little companion devices. They may look like a cute little robot, or they may be a lifelike picture, or they may be the Samsung artificial person, but little devices that are loaded with expert systems that can act as advisors, that can act as information sources, but make the search for knowledge and the dialogue about knowledge much more engaging. This was an overview slide I had shared with the leadership. There's a lot of dynamics in the arena of education. The gaming industry is coming after the education space. We have tech startups creating new quality interactions in augmented reality, in virtual reality. We have online-only schools. And then, of course, we have the traditional institutions who need to figure out which of these new technologies do we embrace? Where do we differentiate ourselves? We have businesses getting into the business of education, creating in-house academies, IBM, Google, and others. And then there's always the unknown. What's going to be next? What does some smart person in Silicon Valley figure out next to influence education? So a very dynamic space. Just a few highlights. This is an example of a traditional gaming company entering the education market. This is a lab setting. Dealing with chemicals is always tricky, and you don't want students to get hurt or burned, so you have to be very careful. But here you can experiment in virtual reality. You can move the chemicals, you can set up experiments, run the experiments. It simulates the chemical reaction, so you can actually learn a lot about the procedures, the safety measures, and then the actual chemical experiences without ever setting foot in a real world lab environment. So it has advantages and disadvantages. This is an example of a new interaction format. From a simple picture, a two-dimensional picture, you can create a very realistic avatar of yourself. And that avatar can now move around in a artificial environment. You can interact with other avatars, so it's not that sort of feeling of isolation or only seeing the faces on the Zoom screen. You can put notes on the wall. You can have visual support of images. So the idea of a virtual office is becoming much more real than we think. And it's multi-platform, so it does not require virtual reality, augmented reality, but it unleashes its full power if those technologies are used to enhance the experience. There are tools for teachers. As I mentioned, it goes across platforms, so you could just use it simply on your existing mobile device. You don't have to invest in new technology. In the future, we could have people who are physically in their offices being joined by virtual avatars. Obviously, the people in the office would need to wear the augmented reality glasses so they can see their virtual visitors. So I could be having a meeting with Matt where he's actually in his office on campus and I'm showing up as a virtual avatar, or vice versa. So let me pause here and see if there are any questions about this technology that I've described so far. Catherine, do you have anything in the chat?
Nope, nothing in the chat right now.
All right, so hearing none.
Yes. I got two quick comments, Oliver. One, something I guess I hadn't really thought about. We bought a smart fan a while ago. You know, I don't know why, I just out of curiosity wanted to play with it, right? And didn't think much about it. And then we since upgraded our internet as the kids were all in virtual school to a faster speed. And I didn't realize that some of those wireless internet connected devices, the gigahertz that they respond to vary. And so I thought it was sort of interesting. I never had really thought about how even these smart products are going to have to turn over quite regularly as the Wi-Fi speed and things like that in our homes are going to change through time. And I just had never really even thought about that component of this whole technology change. So it sort of caught me off guard.
Yeah, we're still in the first generation of smart devices. Basically, every device, every smart device you bring into your home today has its own brain, right? It has the ability to collect information on a remote signal, et cetera, et cetera. The next generation will basically outsource that brain. So the house will be the main brain, and the devices you bring in, they have an interface to the main brain, right? So they're going to be able to do a whole lot more because the central brain is going to direct them. That's going to make those devices cheaper, but you have to make the investment into the central brain, and then the central brain becomes extremely powerful because it accumulates all that information about you. You know, you can turn off your Roomba vacuum and have peace for a moment, but once you commit to having that artificial brain run your life, I don't think you can really turn it off anymore.
It's interesting too, because you can see what an advantage Google with their Google Nest and Amazon has, because all these products, whether it's my thermostat, our hot tub, like our little sensor for the, you know, like the hot tub to see what our chlorine levels are like. It came with our house,
Yep.
you know, and all these smart connected devices all give you the option now to integrate in with Alexa or with Google Nest already. So that there's the future brain, I suspect, huh?
Yeah, and those big guys are getting together already to define the communication standards, right? Because once they control the standard, then it's basically a locked-in market. Then everybody else is going to have to come onto their standard.
The other thing I just noticed today, you talk about AI, I saw a thing came over my phone while we were in this meeting that the US government has now agreed to start using government data to help companies build the AI infrastructure for the United States so that we can better compete with Russia and China on that. So I thought that was an interesting timing.
Yeah, that has been one of the approaches to artificial intelligence across the world have differed vastly, right? In the United States, it was classic capitalist driven, right? Let the guys in Silicon Valley or anywhere figure out amazing use cases for AI and then let the market fund it and let them reap the benefits. And obviously Google and Amazon have made a lot of money off of that. China and Russia have, from the beginning, used national resources, government resources, to promote the advancement because they don't quite have that private sector dynamic, right? And I think the US is waking up a little bit now and saying, hey, you know, if we don't steal our private sector, then you know, many of our companies may just be too vulnerable to attacks from the outside. So we have to get into the business of working with our companies and giving them the best possible technology. So it's a new era that we're entering in, and maybe those attacks on infrastructure, the pipeline ransomware, right? I think that was a wake-up call for people to say, wow, you know, we can't allow foreign powers with their artificial intelligence super weapons to hold us hostage. All right, very quickly, I know we're over our time allocation already, but I want to share with you quickly why I believe Wisconsin has much better prospects than I ever thought. And it has nothing to do with technology per se. It has everything to do with our natural advantage, which is water. I think Corona woke all of us up, whether it was in education, in medicine, in you know, consuming differently, right? So people are much more ready across the world now to look at technology and understand the impact of technology. So that has leveled the playing field a little bit. But independent of that, climate change is having a massive impact over the next 20 years. Water scarcity is going to go up dramatically, and the United States are going to be one of the areas of very high water stress. Now, you look at the water realities in the Great Lakes region, and specifically in Wisconsin, we are going to be one of the few areas that is going to see an increase in annual precipitation rates. So we're not going to have a shortage of water, and we have one of the world's largest water storage or water buffers, if you will, in the Great Lakes. So even if we had a couple of years of drought, or if we had a couple of years of excess precipitation, the Great Lakes can help us buffer that, whereas many other states, they just see the excess run through their geography, cause floods, and then be gone into the ocean. And in years of drought, they have nowhere to go to compensate for that. So we have a massive natural advantage. Second, climate change is going to impact the occurrence of natural disasters. And again, they're going to be concentrated on the coasts. We have some natural disasters here. We have some flooding, we have winter storms, but they're not of the sort of life-altering nature as a hurricane or a tornado or sea level changes, right? There are some predictions on how sea level changes is going to lead to exodus of populations along the coasts. And where can they go? They have to go to places where life is sustainable. So my big picture theory is that Wisconsin and the other Great Lakes states are going to see an absolutely unprecedented inbound migration of people who need to find a new place to live. And so I'm no longer worried that if we don't adopt these new technologies, we're going to be the Rust Belt, we're going to fall behind. My new mantra is, if we can stay at par, if we can meet the bar of technology adoption, we may actually see a golden age for Wisconsin driven by influx of people who may be able to work from home. They may be highly paid executives, technology people, not just climate refugees from Africa, that can boost Wisconsin's population with Wisconsin's wealth levels. And we just have to make sure we stay at par with our adoption of technology, because nobody wants to move to the backwoods where you don't have access to the internet, where you cannot access these new possibilities of technology. So I'll go into this a little bit more when we talk about the climate change feature in a few weeks, but I am more bullish on Wisconsin than I have ever been in the 10 years that I've been here. So that was it for the first overview. And I know I've thrown a lot of terms at you. I really wanted you to get the message that this is the biggest change event in human history. And now you multiply that with the change event that climate change is bringing about. I don't think we've seen anything like this before. Over the next 4 sessions, yes.
It looks like Emily's hand is raised with a question.
Yeah, Emily, please.
Hi, thanks, Oliver. This water part of it's really interesting to me because I'm working with Matt on water initiatives for the university. And I was curious during the pandemic when I just saw these Pew maps of climate change, and it really worried me, and it made me happy to be in the Great Lakes. And then I saw these migration during the pandemic of people to like Texas and Florida. And I couldn't really reconcile that when people had a chance to move, they were moving to all these high climate change, high water stress areas. So I'm kind of wondering about the timescale of what you think about this potential move and migration, because immediately it seems like people are not moving in this direction, even though we have evidence of really hot summers right now.
Yeah, I think what people are doing is they are adjusting their current realities, right? So the pandemic escapees, they wanted to get away from high density areas, but not really give up on any of the luxuries or features that they're used to, right? So they move to less crowded, but still maybe stand out places. We have never taken the time and put in the work to promote Wisconsin as a pandemic-proof, climate-proof destination, right? That work needs to occur. We need to make up our mind that, in fact, we want to be that, and then promote that, right? So if people don't know, they don't go. And so I see this unfolding over the next 20 to 30 years. This is not a near-term initiative. And that's actually one of the struggles, because you talk to lawmakers and they'll be like, yeah, why should I initiate that? I'm not going to be in office anymore when this becomes relevant, right? So you need to find the visionaries, the long-term thinkers, and build a coalition of people who are willing to embrace that.
Thank you. That was really interesting. Thanks.
All right, so over the next 4 weeks, we're going to dive deeper into some of these core technologies that you really have a good understanding, so that when we then get to our technology in context topics, and I say artificial intelligence or blockchain or robotic process automation, you know in principle what these things are, and we can really then focus on how do they influence racial bias, how do they influence the pillars of our democracy, and so forth. So I hope you will stay with us, continue to join us every Thursday at noon in our series. Tell your friends and colleagues about this. This is a unique opportunity to learn firsthand about sort of what's going on in the world of technology and how will it impact our lives. With that, thank you all for joining today, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. I'd also remind everybody, tell your students, send the emails out to the students, right? Let's get some of them on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.